The big deal for NAB this year, AI. You've seen it everywhere, in everything. Is it good? Is it bad? What can it do for us? What do we have to worry about? We're so glad to have Sam Bogoch from Axel AI. And Sam's going to talk to us about this for a while and answer some questions. And why don't we just turn the mic over to you now, Sam?
AI is a really big deal, not only in the broadcast industry, but really globally for any number of reasons. In fact, I was seeing like there's the G7 and Davos and all these big conferences where like heads of state go. And like the number one or number two question they all got asked was like, what do you see as the impact of AI? How do you see the rise of AI? Like it's that big a global story. And of course, it impacts every industry to some degree, but especially the broadcast industry because we are in the content business. And if there's one thing AI is good at, it's crunching and searching and creating content. May not always be the kind of content you're interested in, and there are lots of ways that human beings still do it better, but still it has a very direct impact. Whereas you could see how in other fields, uh, I don't know, just picking like manufacturing, human beings at the end of the day put things together. Maybe there's some robotic arms, but AI isn't going to just swoop in and reinvent manufacturing. On the other hand, with content, there are real risks. And I think we've seen some of that in the last few years, uh, not only for content generation from scratch, generative AI, but also in areas where, like virtual sets, where you might have gone to location to shoot something, but now you can synthesize a background that, looks pretty good and fake the location and shoot it closer to home at lower cost. Um, and then there's what my company does, which is actually apply AI to searching large amounts of content and let you repurpose it and make it kind of fit for purpose for social media, for promos, for other things that were not really possible before. So that's kind of our specialty, and it kind of comes from my background in the industry. So I spent quite a few years at Avid as head of their product management for the Interplay and Media Central products. And these, for those who know, are respectively work group and enterprise level media asset management systems. Now, back then, we didn't have a whole lot of AI. We did have the script sync technology, which was able to help us essentially transcribe or capture time-based text. But, all the cool new stuff that AI has brought out in the last decade didn't exist. And when I started Axel AI in 2018, the goal was to take advantage of all these new technologies. Because in the past, if you wanted to search hundreds of terabytes of content, you would have to have like a squad of interns to tag it all. That never really happened. Nobody has squads of interns. Even if they do, they're probably putting them to work on social media rather than tagging legacy material. But interestingly, social media is actually driving a lot of the need for this because if you just have shows, you send them to air and you just put it in the can, you may not need to search that content later on. But with social media, there's this constant churning. It's like, oh, we need, a, a 3 second clip for TikTok. We need a 10 second clip for Instagram. We need a 30 second clip for YouTube. Uh, all of these things that kind of come at you continuously that no one ever asked for before. And that creates a lot of demand for kind of new, old wine in new bottles, so to speak, getting your old content and putting it to new purposes. So that's what our software gets used for. Um, any questions so far? Because I can delve into details about it. Actually, a quick visual poll. I know a number of you have your cameras on, which is great. How many of you guys like have content that you would like to reuse or store your stuff digitally to the point where you've got, say, tens or hundreds of terabytes of legacy content. Can I have a quick show of hands of that? Okay, so yeah, maybe a third to a half. Okay, great. Um, I mean, so those of you that responded yes to that, you're kind of our target audience. You have video, probably HD, maybe 4K. Uh, and the question is how to get past the traditional broadcast limitations, if you will, right? You only have one channel you can broadcast on. You only have 24 hours a day you can employ. Uh, but meanwhile, the web is out there and people are consuming their content in all kinds of bite-sized chunks on a wide range of devices. And so the question becomes, how can I take this existing content that was designed for one purpose and adapt it to all these other purposes? That really is the biggest challenge. And if you can do that effectively, then you're pretty far along towards making a transition into new ways of work and kind of the 21st century, broadly speaking. Um, to the extent that you're just a linear playout channel, the opportunities are more limited and probably declining along with the demographic of people who actually watch television in its original form. I have a 17-year-old daughter, and she does not watch television, and her friends do not watch television, and plenty of people up through 30 or 40 are not watching as much television either. So folks our age are still watching television, but that is, of course, a shrinking demographic. Uh, I think some of these new technologies are going to be really helpful in getting all of us kind of moving ahead and experiencing some growth because that has not been the case in broadcast. And one of the things about Avid, it was an awesome company and still is to some degree, but they're fixated on a market segment, sort of high-end broadcasters that is not growing. And there's kind of the usual laundry list of three-letter, big name broadcasters here in the US, some of the regional players, people like Sinclair and so forth. Then in Europe, there's a whole nother set of three-letter acronyms, and the same in Asia. But those companies are not experiencing any growth, whereas we have YouTube customers that are experiencing 100%, 200% year-over-year growth. We're also seeing people like corporate video producers, church video, university video, government video, all these segments that are growing much, much faster than traditional broadcast. And it's because they effectively narrowcast. They know who their audience is. They know how to reach them through their website or through other means. And that audience is hungry for the content that they're providing. They don't have to just throw something on air and hope that somebody wants to watch it. Actually, a great example of that, we have a customer called Sight and Sound in Pennsylvania, which is the largest religious theater in the US. They actually have two branches, the original one in Pennsylvania and one down in Branson, Missouri. Interestingly, the two theaters, which are like bigger than Radio City Music Hall, the two theaters are cookie cutter versions of each other. And to give you an idea of the scale of this operation, when they finish up with their annual show, because they run through the holidays, and then they typically tear down that show, ship it to the other location, and start building their next show. When they move that show, it takes over 50 18-wheelers to transport the props, the sets, the costumes, everything else from Pennsylvania to Missouri. That gives you an idea of the scale of these guys. Anyway, they started getting into uh, over the air and particularly movie content. So they've started shooting their own movies for this religious audience who attends. And since they have millions of people that have come to their shows, they have a built-in registry and audience for the content that is related to that. Um, so to give you an idea, these guys have well over a petabyte of media between video, images, audio. Um, and we're seeing petabytes more and more often, even in municipalities and churches. We just did an installation for a large church in Houston that has 1.5 petabytes of content. Um, those are the kinds of numbers that never used to show up outside of the biggest broadcasters. So it is kind of a head turner where you say,
It's
wow,
stunning. It's
yeah,
stunning.
it really is amazing.
Is that for program storage or uh, sermon storage, I guess?
Yeah, yeah. In the case of the church, it's sermons, it's church events, community events. Basically, anytime something happens, they're shooting. Uh, Another example is the governor of the state of New York. They don't have quite a petabyte, but they're getting there. You know, they do all the ribbon cutting, all the speeches, all the meet and greets, everything, and they shoot it all in 4K. So, you know, who would think that a governor's office would have hundreds and hundreds of terabytes of media, but they do. Um, and the same kind of approach applies to sports teams. Just like there's a team following the governor around and capturing everything she does, you can bet there's a team following LeBron James around and capturing everything he does, and Steph Curry and so on. LeBron James actually started his own production company. They have over 50 editing seats and well over a petabyte of storage. They're based in LA, as you'd imagine. Um, but it's like, wow, that's all built around one athlete. Now, at this point, they're doing more content. They're doing content with Oprah. They're selling their services to other athletes. So it's become a whole industry. But that direct to consumer method, where it's like LeBron James knows who his fans are. And if he can make more content for them, he's essentially bypassing the networks. He's bypassing the leagues. He's even bypassing his team to some degree. And that is one thing that we've seen is the decentralization of all this, right? 20, 30 years ago, all sports content came through the networks, and that was that. Then the teams got wise to the fact that while they didn't own the rights to the actual broadcast itself, the game itself, they did own the rights to interviews, fan events, fan footage, all kinds of stuff surrounding the game, right? Practices and all of this and lifestyle footage about their players. So the team started to get into the act where like, okay, we're going to do our own content. And then the next step down from that, as typified by LeBron and Steph and all the top athletes, is that they realize, hey, you know what? The team took this over from the league to some degree. I could do my own version of it and decentralize it further so that it's all about me, LeBron James. And guess what? There's a whole content factory built up around that to supplement the content factory that is the LA Lakers, to supplement the content factory that is the NBA, which all feeds into TNT or whoever is doing the broadcasting. So essentially, each few years, this has kind of worked its way down the food chain to the point where individual people, and don't be surprised if college athletes, now that name, image, and likeness is a big deal, you're going to start seeing individual college athletes with their own brands. I mean, really like video, like here's my video team. This is where we put it up on YouTube. We have, 100, 200,000 subscribers. You're going to see some of that at the college and who knows, eventually high school level. So it's just been wild to watch that progression. And same things happen with churches. You know, it used to just be the mega churches that did this kind of thing. Now it's, especially during COVID, video became much more important. So it kind of worked its way down to the mid-size and smaller churches. They're all video organizations now. It's kind of mind-blowing.
And I've seen some of the manufacturers. One World Computing just sent a thing out today. One of their systems have 734 petabytes of storage. I, I
Wow.
I can't conceive of this.
Wow. 734 petabytes. That's up there.
My first computer had a 5 megabyte hard drive, and I remember, and I've told the story once today. I remember going to the Gotham Audio booth in NAB in '84, and they had a audio storage system, 60 megabytes, and it was only $60,000.
Oh yeah, I remember those days.
Mm.
Yep. But on the same, by the way, the same concept of content moving its way down from the networks to the individual shows. And so, I mean, that is happening in sports, it's happening in religion. Uh, yeah, another example of this was some years ago when I was still at Avid. I was taking a tour group through one of our best customers, which was Entertainment Tonight, ET, in Hollywood, which was a CBS. I think it's still CBS now, but it was a CBS show. And we were giving them a tour, and of course, ET was using our Interplay software, which was great. But we had a tour group. It was probably 30 Japanese broadcasters, and they were nodding and taking notes and taking pictures as they tend to do. And we got towards the end of the tour and showed them the archive. Now, the archive was a room full of LTO tapes. How many people here have LTO tape? Just quick show of hands. Not that many. Okay. Anyway, LTO until recent years was like the default way to store large amounts of video archivally. And it still is, but now it's supplemented by cloud and disk and other techniques. Anyway, we got to the archive, which was 7 petabytes, which was a pretty huge archive at that time, more than a decade ago. And these Japanese broadcasters who had not really done a lot digitally, they were still mostly analog. They were still, or if they weren't analog, they were using like weird proprietary tape formats. Um, they uh, they said, "Wow, 7 petabytes." And so when question and answer came up, they said, "You know, the 7 petabyte archive that you have, how did you convince CBS to move their entire corporate archive to here in Hollywood?" Uh, because that was the only they were like, why does CBS, which is based in New York, have their archive in Hollywood? At which point the ET guy said, this isn't the CBS archive, this is just the Entertainment Tonight archive, right? CBS has their own archive back in New York. This is just for this one show. And I still to this day can hear the gasp in the room when all these Japanese guys who had not yet gone digital realized that you could accumulate 7 petabytes for one show. They were like, oh. So, and of course, Entertainment Tonight gathers huge amounts. TMZ does something similar, huge amounts of content on an ongoing basis, most of which never makes it to air. Uh, and then we have other customers out in LA that similar, like
I've got a
reality
comment,
production companies. Sure.
guys. It's all economics and technology. There's no amazement to this at all. This has always been a market demand. But now you could do more than AOL dial-ups. So they do more than AOL dial-ups. I don't know why you're going on and on about this. And I'm an old guy.
I I totally agree. The technology makes it possible, therefore it happens. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
I
yeah, I'm not
found
I'm
out
not
on my
exactly
new,
young either, but
I just found out on my new iPhone that you can get a terabyte on it.
yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and I went to 128 and I thought I was a big shot. Come on. It's all about technology and the
Absolutely.
price thereof. Right.
Yep.
Now I've got a question
Sure.
on AI, getting kind of back to AI here, although
Yes.
Entertainment Tonight is a lot of fun. Uh, AI companion on Zoom.
Yep.
I've got to use this now. I'm amazed and so forth. And I just asked uh, Barry, why aren't we doing it on this?
We could. Absolutely.
It's free. Barry,
Yep.
turn it on. Send it to us. Are you still there, Barry?
He's here. He's here. He was on mute though.
What I want to get to, Sam, uh, is we have these terabytes, whether it's video or audio. And I think where you're headed is to tell us that the need to, in archiving, to search. And every so often you'll see a news report and somebody comes up with a clip of what so and so said in 1978 or 92 or something like that.
Right.
And I'm assuming that the whole purpose of your starting this company is to use AI to identify previous broadcast material when needed in terms of indexing it or
Absolutely. That's one of the more important use cases, right? You've got a ton of historical material. You want to be able to go back and find a person years ago when they weren't famous and use that footage in a news report about them today. Um, I will say that I want to say It's a more traditional use. But the things we see our software used more often for, and at greater scale, it's about the work that was done over the last 3 months or 6 months. There's so much of it. We have customers like reality shows or uh, studios that do promos. They shoot so much footage in the course of a show. They couldn't find something if you told them, you know, what it was and where it was. It's just thousands upon thousands of clips. And so where AI is really valuable is like finding reasonably recent material that is topical, that fits the need of a given promo, of a social media piece. Um, it's all about quick turnaround because production times have shortened dramatically. So nobody has weeks for this stuff. It's usually the marketing department calling in at, 11 a.m. and saying, "Hey, I need something by 2 p.m." with this character saying, "Show me what you got," or whatever. And then they have to find the clip of that character saying that thing so that they can put it into a promo. It's much more directed by market demand, which is changing in real time. Or come back to the LeBron James example, right? When Luka Doncic was traded to the Lakers, I'm sure there was a mad rush to find footage of him commenting about Luka Doncic, right? So that mattered that day and probably for the next couple of weeks. And then we're on to some other topic and the world moves on. So
Today in radio, we've got no newsrooms. So who's going to go back to find all of that news material?
that is a good question. I mean, if you're just playing, pre-programmed material and you don't have staff to do any of this, then it's a stretch. It also costs money, of course. I mean, deploying this technology, it can be quite affordable. It's a lot less expensive than hiring people to do it, but you have to have the market demand for it, for the content that comes out. So that's a very reasonable question. And I haven't seen a lot of demand in radio for this kind of thing, mostly because the budgets are so constrained.
Grady, we see your hand.
Okay. I was director of engineering for over 30 years for WUMB-FM at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. They are a folk music and acoustic music radio station that broadened into blues and anything else that you could call Americana. At the peak of what we were doing, we had anywhere from 5 to 10 live performers in our studios every week. And we had a live member concert in a large auditorium once a month, 11 months out of the year. And we had special programs that were created by our announcers about the history of music long before we existed. All of that stuff is on shelves as audio CDs and video DVDs. It's almost impossible to find anything. Most of it still has not been put into a memory system so that it can even be searched and accessed. So if somebody who was on staff at the time that that happened doesn't happen to be paying attention to what is needed this week, then they don't even know that they have materials like that. One example is the present management of the radio station on more than one occasion has made comments like, "I don't know why we never did any live concerts on Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket." I personally took the equipment to Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket for several of those concerts, and I have receipts where I needed something at the last minute and had to go to a local music store on one of those islands to get it before the show. And yet, if there's not somebody there that remembers that this happened and that we have something on a shelf somewhere, if it hasn't been deteriorated because it's just on a CDR, for goodness sake, and they have a lifespan that's fairly short, then how do you deal with it? So what you're talking about, Sam, to my heart, it really speaks to radio, but it's a special kind of radio. There's not that much of that kind of local live stuff that's actually happening. Thank you.
Yeah, no, Got that.
Actually, we could have used it at WOR. I
Yeah.
wanted to archive, all of that stuff that went back to, 1920s, 30s, when we had huge newsrooms and we're starting, uh, we started Mutual.
Hmm.
There was all kinds of stuff. And, back when I tried to do it, I was going to do it on mini disc. So, of course, that's all real time.
Yep.
And, simply wasn't possible.
Yep.
Stuff now, since the station has been sold, God only knows where all that stuff is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sometimes people are smart enough to, look after it, but yeah, many times not. Um, One of our customers is the Country Music Hall of Fame in Nashville, and they, of course, get a lot of this stuff contributed to them, audio, video, even props and things. And it's fascinating to see uh, how much comes in, and a lot of it is donated from places like radio stations uh, that either are uh, going out of business or have switched to a less production intensive model and just have this content sitting around. Other questions?
Uh, quick question here. So, is searching or creating the archive about building up metadata associated with the content, or is this just looking at the content and somehow being able to deduce what it is, or is it, like I said, building up metadata behind the content?
It's a little of both, actually. So the way our software works is we crank through all the storage that's visible to our system. It's software. It runs on standard, Mac and PC hardware. But basically, it catalogs all the storage, looks for audio files, video files, images, even PDFs. It then makes proxies, low res previews of everything. They're not that low res actually, but they take up less space than the original files. And then it cranks those through an AI system that does speech transcription, face recognition, scene understanding, where it describes the scene, object and logo recognition. And so what you get out the other end is a pretty, encyclopedic description of what is in that video or audio or image. And then when you search, we have something called semantic search that does an inexact match. So let's say you look for a particular word, it won't just look for that exact word, it'll look for meanings that relate to that. And it does that through what's called a semantic mapping across a large universe of possibilities. So let's say you're looking for a bike, right? It might find motorcycles, it might find pedal bikes, it might find tricycles, might even find some cars. It's broadly speaking looking for vehicles at some point. And there's even a slider where you can adjust it to be more specific or less specific. So to your question, it really happens in two phases. The one is the upfront tagging and the description of the material, and the other is the search. And there's something called vector embedding, where all of the descriptions of the material get packaged up into, a glorified set of numbers that then when you do your search, it's searching across those rather than a specific word spelled a specific way. And that makes it a little more flexible than traditional searching. I do see a question that came in. What I need is AI to do all the archiving. We got all kinds of historical stuff that is sitting around. I'm not doing it. I can barely get them to put metadata on a file on air. Totally agreed. That was one of the things. So this category of product, which is called MAM, Media Asset Management, always sounded great for many years, but when you would actually visit the broadcasters, and these were some of the best funded broadcasters on earth, they never had time to do the tagging either. So don't feel bad. Nobody does. And it was really the advent of AI that made it possible to approach this as a practical thing to do. Because without AI, you need those interns. And a few people could afford it. Actually, coming back to entertainment tonight, when they had the red carpet ceremonies at the Oscars or Emmys and whatever, they would actually have a row of people all doing logging of the red carpet, right? It's like, here comes George Clooney. George Clooney looks left. George Clooney looks right. George Clooney is wearing a suit by Dolce and Gabbana. Somebody was typing all this in, but like that, those even then people didn't have time for this, and that was before social media. Now with social media, everyone's busy posting on social media. They're not going to sit around and tag your material. So you need AI for that. It's actually a job that nobody wants to do if it weren't for AI. So this is one good case where AI is not stealing people's jobs because the jobs historically have not been worth doing.
Well, in my case at WOR, I assume, see, people today, the last 10, 15, 20 years, have been recording stuff in digital form. Now, in my case, if I had thousands of 10.5-inch reels of tape that initially would have to be transferred in digital form, and then AI could tackle it. But just imagine doing all of that.
Yep, all that digitization. Yep, that's a big job. We do partner with some companies that specialize in that, of just like scarfing down, hundreds of terabytes or petabytes of content, usually video. On the audio side, it's more a logistical thing than it is, because you can hold all that data, but you've got to actually, if these are like open reel tape, somebody's got to sit down and capture it all. So,
Well,
yes,
in the case of RKO General, they probably would have done that had digital been available.
right.
But in the case of Buckley and now iHeart Radio, they could care less.
Yeah, yeah.
Grady?
When the manager of the radio station during UMass Boston's WUMB network, the high days of that organization, retired, Pat Monteith spent over 6 months going through everything she could find in the radio station and putting it into those cardboard boxes the size of file cabinet drawers. And there are nearly 100 of those that are now in university archives, but still the metadata about that is in old traditional spreadsheet type storage, and it had to be hand typed in.
Yep.
And so there's a need for the kind of an AI metadata generation and then searching capability that you are developing, because it's not that it's not worthwhile. It's that there's not enough people to do it who could get paid based on the amount of money that's available to pay the staffs of those organizations.
Right. And that's the thing. This is much more both efficient and affordable than having people do it. With our system, even if you throw everything at it that we know how to do, it's about $1,000 a month, and that's for a vast amount of much more material than any team of people could watch over the same time frame. So we haven't actually done the math of how much the cost savings is, but it's probably on the order of 30 or 50 to 1 cost advantage. Now, you're not going to get the same precision you might get if you really had well-trained loggers, but of course, most loggers aren't well-trained to begin with. So if anything, the AI is more comprehensive. You're going to get pretty accurate transcripts, pretty accurate face recognition, object recognition, scene understanding. All that happens in about 1 times real time for the content. So if you have an hour of content, this will get all that metadata in that same hour and on bigger systems even faster than that. So, you can imagine how many people it would take to log at that pace if you were asking interns to do it.
On the other hand, the comment just a little while ago about 10.5-inch reels of tape and CDRs, there's not a mechanism that I know of that can go over and pick up a box with a 10.5-inch reel of tape on it, take it out, put it on a machine, thread it, hit the play button while it's archiving to some kind of a digital system. In the end, it takes a human being to go get it
Yep.
and put it into the system, and you can only start doing the AI stuff after that's been done.
Totally agreed. But
Well,
hopefully the labor for that is a lot less than the labor to actually listen to it all, tag it, etc. So maybe, I don't know, 1/10 or something, but a lot less.
well, actually, it probably can be done. I saw an interview with Mark Cuban yesterday.
Mhm.
Now, Mark and I go back like 25 years,
Hmm.
where he came to me at WOR and had this strange idea of putting the radio station on the internet.
Hmm.
And of course, being the geek that I am, I said yes. And that helped broadcast.com go.
Nice.
And the interview was, he is an absolute fan of AI and robotics.
Mhm.
So the robots could pick up those tapes, put them on the machines, and play them back. And then after that was done, AI could go and catalog them.
Yep. We
And
do see that in video, by the way. There's a company called Gray Meta that focuses on robotic systems to do exactly that for all manner of videotape formats. I just haven't heard about it in audio, but I'm sure something exists.
Any other questions for Sam here on AI?
And I don't have to just talk about the kind of AI we do. I know a bit about, uh, everything from generative AI to neural networks. I've been in this part of the space actually for quite a while, even by some folks' standards on this call. So if there's any perspective I can give or commentary about either AI or how it applies to the media business, happy to do that.
Well, I think as you described and as Grady has pointed out, you have to use it as a helper. It's not going to take over. They haven't developed a robot yet to load and play those tapes.
Right.
So
imagine, if you will, that you need to have a robot look at the condition of the tape and decide whether it needs to be baked first.
Surprisingly, though, you could probably train it to do that, I would think. But, physically manipulating the, yeah, that gets a little tricky. Not totally impossible, but tricky.
Well, as far as radio is concerned and the interest in doing it, it's impossible.
Yes, the budget's, yeah.
I know the University of Memphis used to have a really aggressive program in collecting audio from radio, from history as well as more contemporary. Of course, other than news and some public affairs programs, what do you have on radio that's, do I dare say, worth saving?
Yeah, got it. Well, live concerts, things like that. I mean, obviously, any recordings that were done. Then there's, of course, the rights issue. Who owns that content and who has the right to rebroadcast or process it further? But yeah,
Well, we could have saved all the stuff from Rush Limbaugh.
Sorry, guys.
Who says it's not?
Somewhere, somebody's got that. By the way, I'm just going to post my contact info and the booth at NAB.
Oh, yes, I did get the booth there, but I can do this for you. Um, reminds it, no, SL
Oh, SL 4830.
4830. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's Axel AXLE .ai.
I hope I didn't misspell it.
Let me see here. I got to squint.
So it brings up an interesting question. Can we use AI to analyze your talk show host and predict ratings?
Predicting ratings is hard. Not impossible though. There are a bunch of people doing kind of audience analytics. AI can really be used to do sentiment analysis, figure out. I mean, there's all these use cases that go well beyond searching the material, and more to CTV, streaming applications, because you can get a feedback loop, unlike traditional TV where you just have Nielsen. Here, you can actually engage with people and figure out to what extent they're buying what you're selling. So there is a whole family of predictive analysis for advertisement, for other things, um, where basically AI can do an awful lot.
Eric, let me throw this in and I'll ask you. Certainly, Sirius XM have huge archives of programs. What do you guys do? I was hoping that Eric was listening.
Well, I can certainly answer that question while Eric looks for the unmute button. In the case of Sirius XM, because we had this meeting roughly once every 3 years, we would buy more storage, and
Mhm.
we'd all sit around and say, half of what we have stored is garbage, and we should get rid of it if we only knew what in the world was in the sun. I mean, the
Which
the
half?
the
Which
the
half, right?
Azerbaijan yeah the Azerbaijani folk music might be very good, but in 25 years we've never put up a channel to use it, along with the Swiss comedy records that we have. But the biggest thing was every voice track for every channel that voice tracked was recorded, is in the system, and it's like, well, certainly you can get rid of that. Just get rid of the voice tracks. And it's like, well, it's hard to, they're very homogeneously put in with everything else. So the answer to XM was, we'll just buy more storage. In the first system we had in 2000, we had 14 terabytes, and a very impressive across 14 racks. And as time went by, we had 200 terabytes, we had 500 terabytes, and we bought a petabyte, and then we had 2 petabytes because we had redundant systems. And somebody said, well, let's take the stuff we never use and let's store it in the cloud. And everyone goes, well, that's great. Which is the stuff we never use? Well, nobody really knows that either. So
Right.
I think they're destined to buy more storage, until the floor can't hold the weight of the storage systems anymore.
And just to clarify, we actually uh, support that point of view. We think it's getting cheap enough that you can store everything. So where AI comes in is that once you actually pursue that approach, and it sounds like Sirius was doing that uh, over many years, now you have just this ton of stuff and no idea how to find any particular bit of content.
Exactly.
Yeah, but AI can solve that for you by crunching through those petabytes and finding the good stuff, or at least identifying stuff, so that you can do a search in 30 seconds that would otherwise have. I'll tell you another example that really highlighted the need for this. One company I used to visit when I was at Avid was BET, and they told us a story. They were just getting their first media asset management system. They ended up getting ours. And they said, you know, what really woke us up to this was our management came to us 6 months ago and they said, we want to do a Beyonce special. Do we have enough footage of Beyonce to do a Beyonce special? You know, just of kind of slicing and dicing all the Beyonce. And they had no idea. They were like, we had no way to do it. So we ended up hiring 4 interns for 2 months to look through the entire history of BET to figure out if we had enough Beyonce material. Lo and behold, they did, and they aired the special. But they were like, we should be able to do this just on a whim. We shouldn't have to like staff up to find that out about one artist. And so that's an example. You know, obviously when somebody dies or has a major piece of news about them and you want to do a retrospective and you want that's one very good use of this technology.
I'll also mention the only organization I ever knew of, I don't think they were interns, I think they were paid staff. ESPN, you know, for every play-by-play event they've, like, I think ever done, there's always somebody in a room that's the highlight logger that
Nice.
is keeping a log. I think in the earliest days, it might have been a spreadsheet or an envelope and a pencil, whatever. But ESPN, as far as I know, has always kept a highlight log of everything they've ever done or had the rights for. So that a lot of people started their career at ESPN by being a highlight logger and figuring out if that's really the business they want to get into.
Interesting. Yeah. They've done a great job. And they've obviously they've they've kind of built a little empire there just around that expertise. Um, yeah. Although of course even that is like fragmenting now. There's so many other sports outlets and uh, they're not as dominant as they used to be. ESPN isn't, but that sounds like that's good practices to just have that level. If it's worth putting to air, it's certainly worth logging, even by a human being. I mean, AI definitely, but you know, you're obviously putting a lot of energy into that channel, and it represents, in a sense, the tip of the pyramid of all the content you could have aired. You're out shooting, you know, news, reality, uh, scripted, all these things, you know, thousands and thousands of hours of footage, and then in 24 hours a day, you have to air the best of it. It seems pretty clear to me that once you've gone to all that trouble, you should be logging that. But what we're seeing is that the logging part is moving its way down closer and closer to the raw footage, right? So these folks that are following Governor Hochul around in New York, they're logging everything that happens. Same goes for LeBron in LA. Same goes for these churches. Uh, it 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 just makes sense. If even at the level of just assigning a camera person and going out and capturing the material, AI makes it affordable to get that metadata, just like ESPN always did with a human being. You can get enough metadata to make that material reusable. And the thing is, in the past, it was questionable if or why you would want to reuse that material. But with social media, it's almost guaranteed that there will be uses. Maybe not for that particular piece, but you know, in a given week, and you're shooting hundreds and hundreds of hours of material, it's like somewhere in there is something that would play well on TikTok. You just don't know what it is. And if you don't give people access to it for that purpose, you're never going to find out.
One of the questions earlier in the chat was, how does all this AI approach to radio? And so we see it on several levels. We see it as the archive indexing, and we see it as being able to put video together for streaming and podcasts, which are more and more the product of many of the morning teams and others in the broadcast field.
Yeah, more and more video going along with that for sure.
So,
Definitely.
well, Sam, I sure appreciate your taking the time to talk with us and share these thoughts and where these things are going. Uh, again, I think I put up the wrong way the first time, but
That's okay. No worries.
I think I've got it now.
There
So
you go. Yes, thanks.
it's got the SL
Yep,
4830 as
4030.
well.
Great.
And so
Yeah,
if you're coming to NAB, stop by, say hi to Sam and
thanks.
everybody else. So again, we thank you. We hope we'll get to see you and maybe come back again another day and show off some of your wares.
Yes. Great talk.
Thanks so much, everybody. Great talking. See you at NAB.
Okay.
Great listening to you.